Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is Carmen with Elemental Designs and we're going to create a burlap spine lapbook. For this actually can be used as a lapbook, a journal, or even a folio or a little album. It all depends on what you want to use it for. So what you're going to need a glue gun or some glue. You're going to need 3 pieces of cardstock. You're going to need 2 pieces of burlap that measure at least 2 inches wide by 11. So all you have to do is pretty much fold your cardstocks in half. So you're going to have, two sides of 4 1/4. You're going to want to measure at a quarter, 3/4 of an inch. I'm sorry. You're going to want to measure at 3/4 of an inch. I will have all the information down below as far as measurements. So you're going to want to score 2 of the pieces at 3/4 of an inch right on the beginning of the flap, and then one of them towards the end, you're going to score at 3/4 of an inch, which you're going to see me do here, depending on which way you want the pages to open. Okay, so you're only going to do this on one side, and then we're going to glue down the burlap right along that edge. Since the burlap is about 2 inches wide, this will give you roughly about a good inch right in the center, where you'll be able to pretty much bulk up this folio, journal, lapbook. Like I said, it all depends on what you want to use it for. I really wanted to share with you guys the main construction of this. This is going to be a very narrow kind of book, kind of almost like the Midori's, in that kind of, sizing, but a little bit longer because we are using the entire width of the page. Now you can also do this with by cutting the page down smaller. You can also do the same thing and create even a smaller one using the same principles of what I'm sharing with you here. So as you can see, I had to score again at 3/4 of an inch. I'm doing that towards the spine, the actual part that folds on that cardstock flap, because I wanted one of the books to face in a different direction. So I'm hot gluing this because the glue for some reason didn't work too well with gluing down the burlap. It wasn't sticking too well and it wasn't drying fast enough for my taste. So this is the reason why I'm using the hot glue. And because I'm going to be covering most of this up anyway, it doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. It'll still show pretty well. So pretty much here, like I said, I've scored at 3/4 of an inch, and I wanted this book to open out in a different direction. So I went ahead and just did it over on the other side because that's the side that I wanted. And that'll give me a nice space in between each of the flaps so that I can go ahead and fold them over without having any buckling of any of the elements that I go ahead and insert inside. So to cover this, what you're going to need is 3 pieces of cardstock that are a little bit thicker, or you can go ahead and just double up the cardstock that you're using here. And here I'm just showing you some of the elements that I plan to use inside, which I'm going to be using some of these envelopes to decorate the inside of my little book with. So what you're going to need is 1 piece of cardstock, and again, you can use a cereal box, any recycled material or packaging, or you can just go ahead and reinforce it with another piece of, this is recollection cardstock, so it's a little bit on the thinner side, but if you double them up, it'll reinforce it a little bit for you. I'm just adding a little bit of glue here and there just to reinforce it. So the measurements are going to be, you're going to need 1 piece of at 2 7/8 by 11, and you're going to need 2 pieces at 3 1/2 by 11. And this we're going to use to reinforce the covers on the outside. Um, this is not the decorative, the decorative coverage. This is just to make it nice and sturdy, so that it lasts a really long time and it doesn't fold easily and it doesn't buckle. It'll just give it more strength and more durability. Here, what you saw me doing is just reinforcing by adding some glue under that burlap on the inside, just to make sure that everything is glued down nicely. And this is the first time that I'm creating this specific style, so as I go, I am writing down all my information as far as measurements, so on and so forth. That's the information that I'm reading to you guys today. So you will see me every now and then taking notes. That's just me trying to figure out the size of everything so that I can pass that information along to you guys. Now, as far as these journals and lapbooks that you will see me creating videos for or even sharing, these will all be available for sale. So if you're interested in any of them, or if you even would like for me to create something custom for you, then let me know. I will leave my email down below, and we can definitely discuss that further. So here I'm using a packaging from one of my Deco Art stencils, because I have stored my stencils in a different way, so I no longer need the packaging. So I'm using this to pretty much, get my panels, and it's a thicker kind of cardstock, so it's kind of perfect. It's not too thick, but it's thick enough that it'll give it a nice reinforcement to the book itself. Whenever I create something, I really want it to last, so I always make sure that my things are reinforced and that they're nice and sturdy. You just saw me pretty much getting a quick estimate of sizing for that smaller section in the back. And because my cutting board doesn't really have all the, centimeters and inches and so on and so forth, I had to kind of do a little guesstimate real quick to get that done. But I have that information for you now, and that was 2/7 of an inch. 2 inches, 2/7, yeah. 2/7 of an inch. No, not of an inch, I'm sorry. 2 inches and 7/8. Oh my. It's very early, you guys. It's been a long week for me. So again, I will have all this information down below. So these are really, really easy to create. Um, and they're very versatile. You can do a lot of different things with them. Like I said, you can turn them into albums. You can turn them into journals. You can pretty much do so many things. You can even use this as a basis to create a junk journal. There's so many different things that you can create with this layout. And super, super easy because you're pretty much using the entire length of your 8.5 by 11 cardstock. So you don't really have to do much cutting to create this. I'm just kind of trying to figure out what kind of decorative paper I want. So I'm going to be going through some different papers here and there, just figuring it out. And for the most part, I will be using a lot of scraps that I have left over from other folios and lap books that I've created. So I will be incorporating some of that in there as well. But for the cover, I'm going to go with a very neutral kind of color. So I have this paper here, and it looks like a very faint, very, very faint map on it, and that's what I'm going to use. You can barely hardly see it. It looks more distressed than anything, but there's actually a map on here on this page, and I'm going to opt for this for all my covers. And based on my little tab that I made with the size for that, I was able to pretty much get the perfect size. And again, it's all going to be by 11. So we have 2 and 7/8 by 11, and then two pieces at 3.5 by 11, which is going to cover the two front panels, and then the back panel as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue these on directly onto my cardstock so that I don't have to fidget around too much, with gluing it directly onto the book itself. So I'm going to glue these on directly onto those little pieces of cardstock, and then I'm going to glue those pieces of cardstock onto the book itself. That makes life a little bit easier, but you can, if you feel confident enough, then you can go ahead and glue them straight on, which you can also do as well. And this paper itself is kind of thick because it's like that thick kind of cardboard, not cardboard, cardstock type papers. So that in itself adds another layer of, reinforcement. So the covers themselves are really nice and sturdy. On the second part of this video, we are going to be covering, I've created for it so far, I've created a little journaling area. So I created a little book that's going to go in there. I've incorporated another fold out page, and I've also incorporated the envelopes that I just shared with you there. And that's going to be covered in the second part. So you're going to see me more or less incorporate those parts and those elements into this book. And then the third one is going to be the continuation of that, which is going to be adding other pages and other things, depending on what inspires me. This is still kind of like a work in progress. And I'm recording it as I'm going, and pretty much I'm working through all the ideas and all the different motions as I go. So I'm going to be distressing all of these pieces before I put them in there. I'm just making sure that everything is going to be, is going to fit nice and snug. And if you do it based on those measurements, then the measurements that I'm giving you now are going to fit perfectly in between the burlap areas. Okay, so it's going to pretty much be a very nice fit for that. You're not going to have too much overlapping. And what I would recommend, just to make your life a little bit easier, is to, when you're going to glue it down, if you're going to use the hot glue, glue at the beginning. You've scored your section, so you know exactly where your burlap pieces should be. But glue it right at the beginning of that black cardstock or whatever color cardstock you're using, and leave that space towards those score lines a little bit open. Don't put glue directly on them, so that when you go putting in your cardstock pieces, your panels, you have wiggle room. So if you need to tuck anything under there, then you can go ahead and do so and not worry too much about it. And then you can go ahead and finish that off by adding some glue and just closing it all off. And it'll be nice and neat. I end up having to lift a little bit, just a little bit, just to make sure that it tucks in and everything is nice and even. But again, the sizing was actually really, really good, so everything fit in perfectly. I just had to do that a little bit in certain little places that maybe I put too much hot glue. But so far, so good, you guys. So in this one, we're pretty much going to cover all of the covering of the panels. So while I'm doing that there, let me go letting you know what you're going to need. And to cover the inside, all the decorative panels, right? All the decorative papers to cover all the panels on the inside, you're going to need 2 pieces at 3.5 by 11, right? And then you're gonna need 9 pieces at at 4.25 by 11, because we're covering the entire width. So the math here as well is really, really simple, with the exception of just that one little kind of panel right in the back cover. That's the only little panel that's kind of off a little bit, because it's the 2 7/8, and then the 3.5. It's a little bit different sizing. But as far as everything else that goes on the inside of it, it's all really, really simple. Just remember 3.5 and 4.25. And if you base everything off of that, then you'll be okay. And because we have that 1 inch, spacing of the spine, and the spine is very, very flexible because it's burlap, um, then you can go ahead and really, really load this up, and you'll still have room to grow. Like, it'll still have room to grow. It has a lot of fold out areas. So really there's a lot of possibilities here to really do a lot of things, and to add a lot of things, and even embellishments and different kinds of pieces you can go ahead and add in here. Um, I'm going to be adding a journaling area on this as well. I've created the book for that, and I'm going to share with you guys how I created that book in the second part of this video, which is already recorded. The only things that I have left to do here, it's just continue to embellish it and finish it off. Officially decorate the covers, and what is going to be on the covers, and add a closure to the covers. I'm not really quite sure as far as the closure yet, what I'm going to be doing with it. But everything is pretty simple, and it folds in and out really nicely. So I've decided on some really kind of neutral type colors. So I've got some browns, some beiges, and some kind of creamy kind of colors. I didn't want anything too bold for the base, because I can always implement more colors, and since these colors kind of match with everything, it'll make my ability to choose the rest of the decor, if you will, rather simply. And again, I will have all the information down below for all the measurements that are going to go into this. Once you get the hang of this, these can be done actually rather quickly. Once because again, the measurements are pretty basic. So once you get the handle of how to fold them over and how to glue them down, then you're good to go. And you can use any kind of fabric. I believe you can use any kind of fabric. I think it will work just as well with any kind of fabric, as long as the measurements are properly are in the right spacing. So 2 inches by 11 inches. Doesn't matter what kind of fabric. If the fabric is too flimsy or tears away easily, like some laces do tear away easily, then I would just recommend that you reinforce that maybe by doubling that fabric up. before you lay it down. And if you want it to be double-sided and it's not double-sided, then just glue one facing one direction and glue the other one facing the other direction before you put it in. That way you can have like a peekaboo of what that fabric looks like on the inside. But I would not necessarily recommend that you glue the fabric on both sides, because I think that that can create buckling or issues moving forward. I'm not sure. That's just a theory of mine. Um, but that's the reason why I didn't put the burlap on the inside as well. I didn't want it to have so much material there that when I went to go put my envelopes and everything else that I was going to put in it for there to be an area, create an area, that's going to have a problem or with closing it or keeping it flat, so on and so forth. As of right now, let me see what I've added so far to it. It's got Right now it's got pocket area on one page. It's got 2 envelopes. It's got journaling area with about 14 pages. So that's 7 sheets folded in half. And again, very simple, because everything that we're doing here, it's all based on using the full width of the paper. So there's no need to go crazy with, weird measurements, so on and so forth, or, trying to figure out different measurements for different things. This is actually all pretty simple. The only thing that will make it complicated is if, your decorating style. Depending on the things that you're going to want to add, you might have to figure out specific measurements for other elements and other parts of the book. But the basics, as far as creating a journal for it that goes inside of it, adding your envelopes. I'm using full standard size envelopes in here, and they fit perfectly fine. As far as all that, you're good to go. You have a good amount of space, and you're pretty much good to go. So that's pretty much the basics for this. On the second part of this video, that's where we're going to cover all of the other additional things. And then on the third part is going to be finalizing it, like finishing the whole book off. That's still the part that's where I'm at right now. And I'm trying to see the pieces that I collect for that. But again, all very basic, all very simple. All the sheets measured exactly the width of the covers, and once you fold that 8.5 then you have 4.25 left over. Then pretty much all the sizing is pretty much basic. And I'm using color box. That's what it's called. It's called color box, and I think it's called French something. I don't actually have it in front of me right now. I think I put it away. So I'm done with that book for today. Yes. Oh no, it's right here. Well, I did put it away, but it's called French Prep, and there's a color box, and this is just paper. It's not cardstock, so it's not like your DCWV or anything like that. It's not like the covers that I use. The covers I use are cardstock based type of designer paper, but this is just paper. So it's very thin, and I'm using wet glue for this, but you can use anything that you wish. If you want to use double-sided tape, you can. If you want to use glue sticks, you can. It's completely up to you and what you might have available. Here I'm removing all the excess, because you will have excess, you guys. Based on my measurements, you will have excess. But I know for me, sometimes I can glue things maybe a little off. I know it happens every now and then. So I always try to leave myself just that little bit of wiggle room, just in case I'm off just a little bit. I can fix it. So that's pretty much what that's for. It's so that you, just in case you have a little bit of an issue, you have more than enough, and at the same time you don't have to remove so much excess. So basing it on that, then you'll have a little bit of an edge to cut off of each of the single papers. Sorry about that, I had to close the door. So we're almost done with this part of the tutorial, you guys. And like I said, this will be available for sale once it is done. I just wanted to share with you guys the process on how some of these things are done. This is actually one of the simpler ones that I've done, but they do take a lot of work. As far as timing, to create the basics, and again, depending on what you're using it, your time is going to vary. But when you really want to load it up and add a lot of things, that will take you some time. So I wanted to share with you guys and just show you my process on creating them. And again, this is not like the official style lap book. I'm just turning it into a lap book style um, by making it longer, so that you have to kind of extend it out and roll it in, if you will. Lap books are normally done with folders, where I'm choosing to do mine with just regular cardstock and just stuff that I have on hand. Um, You can create folder-like elements in here, so you can create tabbed areas in here. And if that's something that you guys would like to see, let me know. And definitely for one of the future ones that I create, I'll do, I'll show you guys how to create those with those tab-like elements, so they resemble a little bit more like what the traditional lap book styles are. But for me, my style of creating lap books are not like the traditional lap book styles. I do my lap books a little bit different, a little bit more, in my style. Everybody has their aesthetic, everybody has their way of doing them. Um, and you'll see that everybody has their own, taste and style, so they'll all be very different. They'll all vary in style. I like more of the vintagey, rustic kind of, um, those kinds of styles. And yes, a little bit of shabby chic, but even my shabby chic is not all the way shabby. It'll still be a little bit more on the vintagey side. So that's my style of doing things. Um, and even my journals reflect that. So for the most part, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. And if you have any suggestions, or if you would like to see anything as far as any other like individualized videos, like a video dedicated to creating envelopes, or a video dedicated to just creating pockets or anything like that, then definitely let me know, and I'll put that down for something to do and share with you guys. Um, because the envelopes that I created, you will not see me create them on video, because I created them beforehand for another project that I was working on. I just decided to implement them here because I like the way it looks. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Stay tuned for part 2. It'll be coming up sometime today or tomorrow, hopefully within the next couple days at best, as I get it going. So have an awesome day, you guys.